All right, that's a quick finger. All right, cool. We are going to go for our second cloud technology call. During our last meeting, hopefully if you attended, Todd Eckert from Geisen Group presented his experience of migrating his applications to the cloud. And in general, healthcare, we've come a long way in deciding to utilize cloud technology. Mainly our hesitancy was all around PHI data and protecting it. But more recently, there's been all kinds of cloud services, particularly around security and privacy and identification, all that have really, it's really hard to replicate for some companies. It's expensive to do, and it's actually a wiser choice economically to go to a more secure cloud environment. So we are joined by Amy Berk from Microsoft. Hey, Amy.
Thank you. Hello, hello.
Yeah,
How's everybody today? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. What I would like to do, Amy, is review some of these cool services that are on the cloud, not only the ones that provide that safety and security, but also some of the other cool healthcare things that are out there. And what we'll do is kind of, after we hear Amy present, we'll kind of open it up for people to just discuss their experiences in the cloud. Good successful practices, challenges you might have, concerns you might have, and we'll have hopefully a good open conversation. So Amy, stage is yours.
Okay, give me just a second here because I think I know, I just want to pull up the presentation and then get it into the window here. Sorry, like I said, I don't always use Zoom, so I'm a little bit challenged.
Yeah.
Here we go. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm Amy Berk. I'm the Director of Population Health at Microsoft, and excuse me, an industry advisor aligned to many of our customer accounts, both on the payer and the provider side. A little bit about me. I am a nurse by background. I've been a nurse for close to 30 years with an advanced practice degree. I practiced clinically for 11 years, and after grad school, I embarked on a career in consulting in healthcare. I was a consultant in healthcare for 16 years across payer, provider, public and private sector, and even domestic and international work. And in the public sector, I did work with the ONC on the standards and interoperability framework for almost 3 years under Dr. Doug Fritzma. So that was really fascinating at the time of the Affordable Care Act and such. Done a lot of work in patient-centered medical homes, to the involvement of ACOs, and now into population health, if you will, with value-based care. So my role at Microsoft is Director of Population Health, as I said, and working with our customers to really execute on their vision for population health and how our technologies can help accelerate on that vision. Everybody see my screen?
We do, Amy. It's not in presentation mode, but we do.
Okay, you see it now? Okay,
yeah.
Very good. Thank you. All right. So Ed, thank you so much for inviting me to the WEDI group to discuss cloud and health data services. And, you know, I have tagged Microsoft on these slides, but please note that it's really to talk about cloud, the capabilities of the cloud. We at Microsoft have a cloud, but I want to talk to you about, you know, what the cloud offers, the capabilities that can really optimize on clinical and operational initiatives at any health plan, at any health provider. And as we think about value-based care arrangements and the sharing of data across payer and provider, it becomes even more attractive in the marketplace, in industry. So the cloud is an integrated platform, and it is the transference of data from on-prem into this cloud environment. And as Ed said, providing more of a secure environment. And gosh, Microsoft, you know, we are top-notch into security, and Ed, it might be even considerable to have somebody from our security team come and talk to you guys about security overall, and how it really effectuates on the cloud. But I'd like to say that, you know, data is power, right? And the way in which we harness that data, it's extremely important in today's healthcare world. And I'd like to say too that I think that providers might even be challenged with data because there's so much of it. And how is it that we are to use that data to maximize its impact on health outcomes, on operational efficiencies, et cetera? So I think the health cloud, if you will, really optimizes the way in which data can be used in a simpler manner, more effectively. The other thing I like to say about the cloud is that data then is able to be ingested from all different sources. So that really is that really is advantageous for our payers, for our providers. So as we think about data coming from various systems, electronic health records coming from various sources such as remote patient monitoring or digital therapeutic technologies, coming from SDOH, because we know that social determinants of health are so important on their impact on health outcomes. And even as we think about risk adjustment, because SDOH now is being included in risk adjustment reimbursement initiatives. So, being able to ingest data from various sources, being able then to normalize that data, aggregate the data into something that's meaningful and impactful, and then, of course, harness on that data and use it is the story to tell around data in the cloud. Let me just pause there and see if there are any questions on what I just said. Are people familiar with cloud, and have you experienced interactions with the cloud environment in the work in which you do?
Yes, absolutely, Amy. This is Shurish here. I'm very familiar with all three clouds, Azure, GCP, and AWS. So we'll have a lot of questions as we proceed with the conversation.
Okay.
But this is the stuff we sort of breathe and live in.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So maybe then we'll talk about the scenarios at play here with our cloud and empowering health team collaboration, improving clinical and operational insights, and enhancing patient member engagement. And I would even say then to extend that to provider engagement as well, because it takes both. It's about the member, the patient, the member in the payer environment, the patient in the provider environment, and the consumer overall, right, before they enter into one of those brick and mortar environments. But I'll say about brick and mortar environments, hence we're seeing a lot more where healthcare is becoming local, healthcare is in the community, healthcare is in retail. So that brick and mortar environment is not so much anymore. So the way in which we then empower collaboration. Oh, sorry. Does someone have something to say? Pardon me. The way in which we empower health team collaboration is thinking about use cases around using collaborative technologies to enhance care team collaboration. And I know this as a former director of care management myself, being able to really communicate and collaborate with your teams internally, with your external providers, really has high impact on the way in which you manage your members. And when I say manage, I mean care for your members. And this also is an efficiency gain, because if we can cut down on all of the back and forth communication that happens, or shall I say the attempt of back and forth communication, because I'm always calling my provider and they're never there, or waiting for a call back, or whatever the case might be, adding that level of efficiency becomes so important in how we then communicate and collaborate with our providers and our members too. So being able for our care teams to come together, have those multidisciplinary care team conversations that are needed for member care, for patient care, being able to even engage with our patients and members better in omni-channel engagement in the ways in which we outreach and engage. So just not traditional phone calls anymore, but using digital devices and, remote patient monitoring, as I said before, becomes extremely important and a better experience overall for the patients in which we care for. Care coordination to improve health outcomes. I think what I like to say here in this is that, on this topic, is that care coordination definitely is very, very important. As I said before, it's more than care management, but it's about outreaching to our community providers in the way in which we communicate and collaborate with physician providers, primary care providers, behavioral health providers. But care coordination too is also about how we communicate and collaborate with our, in the community space and social network of what's out there socially to help our members and our patients achieve their health outcomes. And we could do that intelligently, and there's a level of prediction involved in terms of how we think about predictive modeling and being able to identify and target populations that we want to coordinate care for, that are necessary in terms of health equity initiatives, et cetera. On the remote patient monitoring, as I said, ingesting that data into the cloud so we can see that full view of what our member or patients are doing in terms of their chronic condition or acute condition even. So there's a lot of devices that are out there, including wearables, to those that are more prescriptive in nature, such as glucose monitoring, and other types of digital therapeutics and medication adherence monitoring, et cetera. But what I like to say about remote patient monitoring from the clinician's perspective, this is an opportunity for the clinician to have a better understanding, if you will, of that patient's health journey, that, in terms of that device in which they're able to monitor, that really optimizes on their condition. But it's also a way to engage with the patient, to empower them to self-manage themselves, to optimize on their outcomes. So I think that's really important to say. And I put my nurse hat on when I say that, because I think, patients have to really take a step forward, or take a step into how they manage their own care. So moving on to the second scenario then, in improving clinical and operational insights around being able to act on intelligent and insightful information. So data and analytics comes into play here, and how is it that we can aggregate, normalize and aggregate data into meaningful impact? How is it that we can act on data and what we are able to evaluate on? So evaluating on clinical, operational, and might I even add then financial outcomes becomes extremely important in any healthcare environment. And layering on artificial intelligence to glean on the insights that are necessary, when we cross-examine all of this data, and interoperability then to facilitate on value-based care arrangements, to facilitate better care coordination, is very much at the forefront of today's healthcare environment. Virtual health. The last part of the wheel then, enhance patient engagement around how we can engage our members better with virtual health. So we are partners with Teladoc, one of the prominent telehealth players in the marketplace. But the point here is, virtual health is around traditional telehealth as we think about primary care and some specialties that have leveraged telehealth, like dermatology, even radiology, cardiology, but also virtual health is pronounced now in even care management, and that care managers have the opportunity to engage virtual health, to engage their members in virtual health in the payer environments, to do assessments and care plans, because this has traditionally been a telephonic approach, but certainly virtual health can be extremely powerful in the ways in which we communicate, or engage with our members. And then being able to use artificial intelligence to predict on predictive models, and making certain that we're able to predict on risk of our population, and being able to act then more targeted on that risk of targeted groups. And finally, being able to be more personalized in our relationships with our members. So precision medicine, if you will, and being able to act on genomics and such for more personalized therapeutic treatments and care. So with that said, the cloud then is wrapped around with security, high level security in terms of access, in terms of permissions, in terms of being compliant with HIPAA, and making certain that the exchange of information in those interoperable arrangements are met with security as well. So let me just pause there and see if there are any questions.
Amy, I have one.
Yes.
So I see all these really cool things around and supported within the cloud. I'm always I'm a good old OSI stack guy. I like the technology, then the applications built on top, right? So it seems like these applications are writing the cloud's technology using different services. Being able to have everything in one data pool, being able to bring these different sources together, having different sort of services to be able to ingest the data. Having security wrapped around, of course, AI analytic type services as well as kind of plays a part of it. So I always like to talk about stuff underneath the covers, right? But it's really good to talk about the cool things that a healthcare organization can do on the health cloud. But I just wanted to, I think some people on the call are very interested in that, and other people also involved in nerdy stuff like I am, like the actual services.
No,
well,
of course.
Looks like you're getting there. Looks like you're getting there on this one.
Yeah, this slide here is
cool.
presenting. No. So our cloud for healthcare then is that stack in which you alluded to, right? And, it's like building blocks or Legos that come together, components, if you will, that build on the Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare. So there are applications and services on the very bottom here. We have our Dynamics platform, which is focused on workflow, the Azure platform, which is focused on the data, our Power platform to automate, and then Microsoft 365 in terms of our suite of modern work, et cetera. And on top of that, then for our cloud, this integrated platform, of course, we bring in various components like FHIR APIs to act on interoperability, like connectors, where we can look at various applications to bring into the cloud, and Power Apps, where we're able to automate various digital technologies, being able to use different types of templates and lists and messaging and tasks in our Microsoft Teams. And finally, sorry, I'm having difficulty seeing on the very right here, but data analytics is an important part of that as well. And this then brings, if you will, all of those use cases in which I talked about to life, and, building on the notion that the data is what's acted on to really then facilitate on the various use cases. So there's some considerations in how we manage healthcare data today. There is, the growing volume of data that's out there, the type of data that's out there, and the real-time velocity of the data itself. So, the cloud then provides for a more scalable, flexible, adaptable environment. And I often have this conversation with the customers in which I'm talking with, in that, they're growing their membership, right? Or they have goals of aspiration of growing Medicare Advantage service line, or their members in other service lines, and they're on-prem, and it's like, oh my gosh, how are these archaic systems able to manage and handle all that data? That to me is a priority value proposition right there, is that the cloud can scale for managing enormous amounts of data and doing that, and managing that data quite well. So, we think about systems of record and how that feeds into real world data and real world evidence. Sorry, I'm having difficulty. Again, I'm not as familiar with Zoom, so I'm having some difficulty here to try to move. Here we go. In real world action, right? As I said before at the very beginning, it's, being able to activate on the data, and that's where data becomes so powerful in the cloud, really optimizes on that scenario. So I think there was a question, Ed, around if there were marketplace FHIR APIs. Wasn't that your question that you had?
I think that was a type of a service that it would be awesome to learn about.
So we don't have that, because we have what we call the Azure Health Data Service. And this then takes the place of the marketplace for FHIR APIs. So this is a managed service, and it's done through a portal that you sign up, that enables health and life sciences organizations to unlock the power of the data that's there. So that data then is able to demonstrate itself to be ready, to be health ready, if you health data ready, enterprise scale, being trusted and secured, enabling for healthcare APIs in terms of how we then integrate imaging data and remote patient monitoring data, unstructured data into structured data. And we have text healthcare for analytics to take unstructured data into structured data. And then being able to build out healthcare connectors in terms of the secondary use of data, data visualization with Power BI and other type of apps, or if people are using Tableau, we can integrate into Tableau, and advanced analytics with artificial intelligence technologies. And, being able then to build technology for protected health information in the cloud, right? So these sets of animation here is just really pronouncing that everything is protected with security services. And, in terms of the data that's there within the cloud, within this health data services, we're able to take unstructured data into structured data, collect on imaging data, other types of data, et cetera, enabling new workloads. And the second, each of these are going into a deeper dive of what is enabled from these type of scenarios, right? So health data connectors in terms of secondary use data, data visualization, advanced analytics, and what you're able to do in terms of being able to discover on new insights around the data that's there. So being able then to visualize data and course correct as need be, whether it be for treatment, whether it be for program initiatives, et cetera, using advanced analytics to really glean insights from all the collected data that's there as you cross-examine data from various sources. And the secondary use of data in terms of the imaging data becomes extremely provocative of a use case as well. And specifically around PHI data, being able to scale the data and provide for that trusted and secured environment is really around being compliant with such standards as ISO and HITRUST and HIPAA, et cetera, and being able then to scale on that protected health data. So this then lays out the architectural layer, if you will, on health data services for Azure Health Data Services. So there's a FHIR service, a DICOM service, and a MedTech service, and data is ingested. It's persisted through the FHIR store and DICOM store. It's then queried and integrated into our various technologies for visualization of data. And that layer of security then is integrated to ensure that there is user permissions and various access management that's granted, as well as privatization of the data itself. And this is just more information on a deeper level of what I just discussed earlier in terms of health data services and the power that it unleashes or unlocks in terms of empowering those new workloads, discovering on new insights around the data, and building on a trusted cloud. So that is the end of my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, we certainly have a few on chat. It's I think Suresh, you have a few. Would you like to?
Sure. Happy to elaborate on my questions. Mm-hmm. So first off, Amy, thank you for an insightful presentation. It's very helpful. My first question is, you specifically talked about the security framework. Mm-hmm. And as we know, our industry is very concerned with PHI and PII handling. So for organizations, those looking forward to build their services on top of Microsoft Azure, is there an option to leverage your security inheritance built on cloud so that the lift required from application perspective is minimal?
Yes. I don't know all the details of that scenario, but I know that happens and is true. I will just say from what I understand of Microsoft's security, it is bar none the best in the industry. And the innovation that's in the security framework is far above and beyond what others are doing in this workspace. Like I said, I would be happy to reach out to one of my security colleagues to give a deeper dive into this topic, because I certainly don't want, I am not an expert in security. So I'd be happy to invite somebody, Ed, when it's appropriate, and we can get that discussion going.
Okay, thank you, Amy, and
Yeah.
perhaps even an introduction offline to is it Suresh or Shrish?
Shrish. Yeah, this is Shrish.
Sorry about that, Shrish. If you can just, we can try to hook you up with Shrish to perhaps by that kind. That'd be great.
Fantastic. Amy, I have one more question.
Certainly.
And there are amazing, innovative health tech startups who would like to work with Microsoft Azure. And typically the way industry works, that they like to be cloud agnostic in building their capabilities. But it creates a challenge in terms of leveraging your marketplace and creating two-way engagement or traffic. What's your approach in working with these health tech startups to leverage larger Microsoft ecosystem? And yet at the same time, you could be the recipient of the innovation happening out there.
Yes. So I myself don't work with a lot of startups, but Sally Frank, my colleague, does. And there is a whole division that's dedicated to startups. So again, I can make that introduction, Sharice.
Okay.
And Sally is able to better give you the overview of how our startup program works. And it's at every tier, if you will, that we bring startups in and, you know, invest in startups to make them successful on our cloud or being cloud agnostic.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So welcome. Absolutely.
Yeah, I've seen an appetite, Amy, of cloud vendors or organizations wanting to have different guys from vendors, right? And
yes,
to be able to get that published. So I experience that in my world where we want to be able to get our APIs wherever people are at so they can leverage them, right?
That's exactly right. Yes, most definitely.
Okay. Any other questions for Amy?
This is Tom White. I have a question.
Sure.
As far as the production environments and cloud with Azure and stuff like that, there's a great deal of information out there with regard to secure deployment and architecture. But what's missing, I think, is with regard to administrative systems like Office 365, OneDrive, SharePoint, things like that. So could you speak for a few minutes as far as secure deployment or possible additional sources of information with regard to secure deployment of those systems? Because there's situations where those systems might have PHI, and instead of just not using it PHI with Microsoft, it would be nice to have it,
Yeah, no,
and if you don't mind, frankly, the online documentation from Microsoft with regard to OneDrive, SharePoint, and Office 365 and PHI HIPAA compliance is ambiguous and sometimes contradictory.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. I think again, one of our security specialists might be a better person to address that. But I know from conversations, from learnings, security is a top-notch priority for Microsoft. And it applies to every single solution that we create, that we sell to the marketplace, et cetera. So I think the best thing, Tom, pardon me, would be that I invite one of our security specialists to speak to all of you, so you have confidence in the security platform that we offer across all of our solutions.
Amy, you didn't write that documentation, did you?
No.
Yeah, okay, just making sure.
No, on security, no.
I'm teasing. I want to open up the call. We do have a nearly a half hour on the call, and certainly we're not about promoting any one vendor, right? So there's Google and AWS and Microsoft and others right out there that provide cloud services. So whatever platform you might be on or aspire to be on, I'd love to hear some thoughts about your experiences, positive and challenging. Would anybody like to share?
This is Brad Wakeman.
Yeah, thank you, Brad.
I work for Geisinger. So Todd did make a presentation last week. I'm kind of a user from the perspective of that project. I work in EDI, and he's in charge of that larger pull. I have learned, so I've been learning along the way. There's some advantages to disaster recovery also that I just wanted to pass along to you. Amy, I don't know if maybe you have some knowledge of that also, but
Yes.
I can tell you that the health plan, we had some data 5 miles apart, where we kept some of our data currently. And after we get our project done, it'll be hundreds of miles away difference as far as the data. So that seems to be something, an advantage that I'm learning as I go along in that project. Another plus is not only the great security and the things you mentioned there, Amy, but also your DR
Yes.
seems to be safer. I don't know, I'm just kind of learning along the way, so I appreciate your presentation. And it seems right now in that project here, when you get to the techie stuff, there's a lot of firewall work going on. Doing it in waves, doing the safest applications first is the way that everyone seems to be doing it. And that's about all I have to mention. I just wanted to mention something, Ed, so that's all I had. And thank you.
Yeah,
No,
thank you.
my pleasure. Thank you. I could tell you that we have dedicated teams for disaster recovery. We put that into our strategic plans when we work with our customers. So it definitely is a very prominent part of deployment of our solutions.
Is it Brad? Just
Right, yeah, Brad.
Yeah, good.
Brad, you met with me and Sam a few months ago, probably.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, so I do want to share my experience working at a former company, not my current company, where we were a software vendor and trying to take advantage of the cloud. And one of the things I really enjoyed was the ability to copy data to a partition to another part of the country, right? So as you're writing data into the data pool, the data is being copied to another, so that you could actually turn a switch so that your disaster recovery would automatically be running on another region. I thought that was a pretty slick capability. Yeah, and also at Geisinger, they're doing that hot, and I'm sure Microsoft, that hot turnover on a lot of, that's. And the other one that really was a turn on to me, dealing with computing for nearly for about 40 years, is that you always worry about performance, right? And you start to get more and more volumes, and it's a thing to be able to go and having the algorithms to be able to allocate more processing power when you need it. And then shrinking down and being charged for that, so that you're not always charged for this much. You're charged for to the what you normally run and maybe what you can expand to. It's a pretty cool where you're saving lots of money, I think, from buying hardware to support the full volume rather than just the normal volume. Amy, any thoughts on that? Well, as I said, the volumetrics around the cloud, right? It's adaptable to handle and manage that much more data. I mean, I don't even know what the right megabytes of data is, but that's one of the most prominent value propositions, and making certain that that data is seamlessly, shall I say, moving through the cloud in a way that is able to be activated on becomes extremely important. So I think the management of the data in a more scalable manner is definitely one of the value propositions of the cloud. Yes. Thanks, Amy. Also, interesting dealing with the government where they need FSMA high or FedRAMP high because they're so concerned that, you have to pass all of these, different, security certifications and all. Any experience there, or anyone on the call have experience with FedRAMP or FISMA?
I don't myself, but I know that Microsoft is in compliance with every standard for data security, privacy, etc.
Cool. Thanks, Amy.
Mhm.
Well, let's see if I can inspire more conversation.
Yeah.
Anybody on the call who's hesitant to, or your company's hesitant to join the cloud? I'd love to hear your thoughts and what are your company's concerns? And by the way, it's okay to feel that way. Just saying. No judgment here at We. Anyone like to share, or perhaps you have Chuck, you have something there.
Yes, Chuck Favarka, Kunzle & Associates, supporting Michigan Medicaid. One of the questions that I would have, Amy, would be the location of any server farms or storage capabilities that are offered with this cloud approach, and any restrictions on retaining all of that domestically in the US. Are there any? And secondarily, if they do exist today under the current ownership of this software environment, this cloud environment, what are the protections that in the future other investors don't come along that then acquire the resources, and then those physical location parameters change?
So our footprint with the cloud it's global. There are some countries that we are not in. I believe those countries that are, there are countries that the UN have stated, like Iran and such, like we don't go into those countries, but we have a global footprint with our cloud. In multiple industries, not just in healthcare, but we're in finance and merchandising retail and merchandising, manufacturing, transportation. And I'm sorry, the second part of your question was about?
How control of the location and availability of that data worldwide can change when the ownership of the company changes.
You know what, I'd have to ask that, Chuck. I'm sorry, I don't know that offhand, to be quite honest.
Sure. I'll just cite a scenario and
Yeah.
describe where I'm coming from.
Sure.
We're working under a requirement that storage of our healthcare data must be domestic.
Okay.
We had a new partner engage with us who wanted to perform services for a provider, and they were working with a vendor that had recently been acquired by a new entity.
Okay.
The new entity was not domestic US. So we had to go into a whole screening conversation about, okay, so how can you ensure you want to engage with us as a vendor storing data that a provider that will have access to our eligibility, our patient's history, and so forth. And that vendor is not domestic. How do you ensure the domestic, how should I say it, restriction is going to be observed, and that this data cannot somehow be ported outside the US?
So I think it comes down to a contractual agreement most of all, right? And if there is negligence on the contract or breach of contract, then there's penalties. But if you don't mind, Chuck, I could take that question back to the powers that we work with. We have a team, Sila, our legal team, if you will, and ask that. I have somebody I can ask directly, actually, that question, and I will get back to you on that.
Certainly. And I think that something that is overlooked is contractual remedies are after the fact. Okay. the horse is out of the barn, and the horse cannot be corralled back into the barn as far as PHI goes. So there is a very strong security consideration or concern when we start talking about cloud locations, when the provider or the payer or the clearinghouse doesn't know really where that data is sitting, or if it's replicated, or if it's backed up, or if it is made available for analysis on other than a domestic US basis. And I think that I hear very little about that conversation in the industry. And I think that's a worthwhile conversation to have with your legal team.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And it's probably already happening. I just haven't been privy to it because I haven't run into that scenario just as of yet. But like I said, I will reach out to our legal team and get you an answer on that. Most definitely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chuck, it's my understanding, at least on some cloud providers, that you subscribe to the partition location, right? I'm running on East, or I'm running on West, or I'm running in Midwest, and that you would be able to designate which regions or whatever your data would flow and where it would be restricted. That's my experience personally, but I imagine Microsoft has some sort of approach like that as well.
Yeah, I'm certain that we do. I just don't necessarily know it because I'm not involved in the transactions of all the cloud, if you will, with our customers. There's our account executives, and as I said, our CELA team gets involved and so forth. So but I'm going to find out.
Okay, cool. Yeah. When it comes to us, we're paranoid, right?
No, exactly. No, you should be.
Right.
Important.
All right. Any other thoughts? Any concerns or successful practices from your organizations?
This is Tom White again.
Yeah.
I'm actually general counsel for Alpha 2.
Oh, hi.
And and we've gone through the Azure exercise, moving, developing a cloud-based environment on Azure. And to answer Chuck's question, we had those same questions. And with Azure, the answer is that now we're building I think a FedRAMP. We're looking at a couple different environmental builds, one FedRAMP and one healthcare based. But I know for the FedRAMP one, that does have a domestic data requirement in it. And so that's certainly contractual, but you're on the customer side of the contract with the federal government agencies. But to your question about ownership in the future, I think as a customer, we should not just do due diligence at the beginning of the relationship, but do a continuing diligence throughout. And so if at any time you were to see Microsoft being, more and more owned by foreign entities to a point where it's a risk issue, then, the best thing to do is to counsel your developers to build their systems, their cloud systems, in a vendor agnostic manner.
Okay.
So that you can bail and go to somebody else who is maintaining their domestic ownership.
It's always good to have a lawyer on the call. Thanks, Tom.
Well, it's a little embarrassing, so I try not to bring it out that often.
We are, please, if you're not involved with our privacy and security team, please join that work group. They appreciate that kind of perspective. Other thoughts? I just want to take a quick break to, there's a organization that is that I want to see what the interest is for this particular group. So I'd like for you to all open up your chat window and get ready to respond saying you like it or this is boring. Those are the two responses. You like it or this is boring. So it's an organization that is all about blockchain, and they would like to go ahead and review a use case that's in production for provider directory and how it's being used and how successful it is and things like that. And just want to see in the chat if that would be interesting to you or not. So if you can just go ahead and open that little chat box and please type it in. Yeah, like it. I haven't seen boring yet. Once hear someone come and slam it for me. That's more fun. All right. Yes. Very interested. Okay. Well, I think there you have it. Bill, I think we have a winner there. Good. Okay. Well, I think that's what our next topic is. We're going to try to nail down speaker for that the same schedule time. If it's hard to lock it down, we may do a special calendar invite. So keep watch on that. So Amy, this has been I don't like to do too much on one topic. I like to kind of move around a little bit, but I will remember that security and in the cloud. I won't forget that.
Okay, very good. Yeah, because like I said, I'm happy to make those introductions and have that, bring somebody in to talk about security in the cloud at a more technical level and be able to answer some of those, questions that are out there that I cannot, because I don't have that deep level of security expertise.
Yeah, I understand. And I'm sorry, we have the security questions come up.
No, it's good though. It's very good. But I can assure you that we at Microsoft take security very, 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 very seriously. And they are working on innovation and security each and every single day. So.
Okay, it sounds like you have a fan in Jeff Jennings. He wants it. So. Okay. What we like to do, we're like Saturday Night Live. We like to kind of line up our guest speakers.
Yeah. Well, I do hope I was able to bring some interest around the cloud and answer everyone's questions. And it was really a pleasure to speak to all of you today.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really cool to see all the things that Microsoft is doing in healthcare. That was really rewarding to see as well.
And Amy, thank you again from Wade's perspective.
Absolutely.
Randy just can't stop from clapping. Just you can see. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you next time.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.